guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's it. Today is the day. I am doing my best books of 2022 video. I'm so excited. These are my favorite videos to watch. I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way too, getting all kinds of book recommendations from everyone. I read 182 books this year. I think last year I read like 160 something, maybe 100 and maybe not even. I honestly don't remember. So how I'm gonna do this, I am going to start with the horror books. Actually, no. You know what? I'm going to start with the thriller books. I'm going to do the couple thrillers that I have, and then we're going to get into general horror, then we're going to get into extreme horror, and then I'm going to do the 2 memoirs last. So all of these, there will be no particular order, but if you want to just look at like one genre, you can skip ahead. I broke it down to 22 books that were my favorite. I had a lot of books that I gave 4 or 5 stars. I had a lot of books that I did not like this year, but I also had a lot of good ones. And so these are the best of the best. I further broke it down into 22. So these are my top 22 of 2022. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first jumping into the thriller category, I have Confessions by Kane Minato. So this is a tiny little Japanese thriller where we are following this woman. In the beginning of the book, we know something tragic happened to her 4-year-old daughter, and she is trying to figure out what happened and get revenge. So she is talking to this classroom of kids, and she's like, listen, I know one of you did it. I know multiple people in this room did it, and I am going to get revenge. So we are following Chapter 1 ends in like a big fucked up twist. So good. And we're basically following like multiple POVs from different kids in the classroom. So each chapter is the same story told over again from a different point of view. So it does get a little bit repetitive, but it doesn't take away from how amazing the story is, because each chapter ends on a twist, and the twists are crazy, they're messed up, and so good. The ending of this book had me shook. This is such a good thriller. Then I know I've talked about this book a lot recently, but it's Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is a book that it reads like an action movie. Everyone compares it to a Quentin Tarantino movie. That is completely accurate. So we are following these 2 dads, and their sons were murdered. Their sons were gay and in a relationship. So we're following a black dad and a white dad, and they kind of come together and form this little dynamic duo to figure out who murdered their sons. It is powerful, it is action-packed, it's a thriller that says something, and it was just really well done. It pulled me out of a reading slump. I needed to just keep reading. I needed to know what was gonna happen, and it is such a good one. Another book I've talked about a lot this year, They Never Learn by Lainey Fargo. I love this book. It is a good for her type thriller where we are following this woman, Scarlett, who works on a college campus, and she is secretly a serial killer. She kills men who are like rapists and just shitty all over, and yeah, she gets her revenge on them by murdering them. And we're also following this other timeline from a student that once went to this college, and I can honestly remember all the twists in this book. Like, it is so rare that a thriller sticks with me and I remember the twists, remember the plot. I remember this book like it was yesterday. I love this book so much, so well done. It's a book that has stuck with me, and it's a book that I think everyone needs to read. If you love thrillers, you need to read this book. Next is, it's not technically a thriller. I know it's kind of labeled as one, but it's more like a psychological drama, literary fiction, suspense book. It has like a slight thriller vibe at the ending of it, but it's not a thriller. It is The Push by Ashley Audrain. Listen, I didn't know how I was going to feel about this book. I've had people tell me this is the worst book they've ever read. I had people tell me this is the best book they've ever read. I had no idea where I was going to fall. If you have any triggers towards like children, having children, postpartum depression, death of children, like anything involving children, please look up trigger warnings. This one might not be for you, but this was one of the best written books I have ever read in my life. The writing is stunningly beautiful. It is about this woman who has a child. She has a daughter that she doesn't feel a connection with, and it's very obvious throughout the book that the daughter has a strong connection with the husband and not her. And she is struggling to come to terms with that. And then she has a son and everything goes as planned, and she has this amazing relationship with her son. And tragedy, sad, traumatic, bleak, depressing, horrific things happen to this family. And it is so heartbreaking. And the way that this is written is so beautiful. Some of it is in second person because she's like writing a letter to her ex-husband, and so some of it is like you, but it reads like you're reading a letter in those parts. Like, it is so beautiful, so heartbreaking. I cried. This is literally one of the best books I've ever read in my life. I know some people might not feel the same way, but girl, that's why this is my channel. It's not your channel, okay? But this is so, so good. And then the next book is more of a cozy mystery, and it is The Maid by Nita Prose. So we are following this maid named Molly, and one day Molly is cleaning the rooms. She works in this hotel, and she comes across a dead body. And she is super awkward. She is terrible at, you know, human interactions. And they're basically trying to frame her for murdering this guy. And it's just cute. She's cute. She's funny. I absolutely loved her. There were a couple twists at the end where I was like, holy crap. Like, it really brought it from a 4-star to a 5-star for me. It was just a cute, cozy mystery, and I would die for Molly the Maid. I would take a bullet for Molly the Maid, okay? Next, let's move into some horror, shall we? So the first one, actually 2 of these are old horror books, like classic horror books that are also movies. The first one is Psycho by Robert Bloch. Of course, we're following Norman Bates in the infamous Bates Motel, and he is working in this hotel with his mother, and basically we're just following him as he, you know, checks in the guests, and they realize that there is something very sketchy about him and about his mom that lives at the hotel with him. It is just creepy, unsettling psychological horror, and if you have not seen the movie Psycho, what are you doing? If you've never seen the show Bates Motel, what are you doing? If you've never read this book, what are you doing? So good. It's literally psychological horror at its best. It was written in like 1950s, but it doesn't read like that. It's so easy to understand. It's so short, and it was such a good read. This is another old book that is also a movie, and it's Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. This one, of course, we are following Rosemary and her husband, Guy, and they move into this apartment. It's like this perfect apartment. It's exactly what they were looking for when they moved. And the neighbors, they have this like old couple that live next door, and they think that they're great, but the neighbors are a little bit weird, and they're practicing some weird stuff. And we're just following our couple, Rosemary and Guy, as they navigate Rosemary's pregnancy with the crazy neighbors. If you don't know anything about this, I don't want to give anything away. Definitely read it and check the movie out. They're very, very similar, but it's so good. And it's another one that was written a long time ago. When exactly was this written? In the 1960s, and it just reads like a modern horror book. Like, it doesn't feel like it was written in the 60s, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, another great one and a horror classic that you must read. Next, I have one of my favorite authors. It is The Devil Crept In by Anya Alborn. This one I absolutely loved. I've heard so many mixed things about this one. I've heard that it is, you know, that people didn't like it. I've heard people loving it. Like, it seems like everyone's kind of on different sides. I know a couple of you guys read this book because of me and said it was like, eh. But to me, I just absolutely love this one. I recommend. So this one, we are following this this young boy, and his cousin goes missing, and he just kind of vanished without a trace. No one has seen from him, and all of a sudden, it's like weeks later, he just shows up, but he's not quite the same. He's weird. His skin is falling off. It's just a weird time. If I keep looking down there, it's because there are ants all over my office. We have an ant infestation. I don't know where the fuck they're coming from, but they're everywhere. So that's why I keep looking down there. I'm like, what the hell? I just killed like 6 of them. But anyways, yeah, so he's not quite right. So if you like creepy children, which isn't my favorite trope, but if it's done well, I think this was done well. I really enjoy it. It is kind of predictable, like you kind of know the entire time where the story is going to go, but to me it didn't take away from the wow factor that is Anya Alborn's writing and her storytelling, and I just had such a fun time with this one. It was a fun time. I think if you like creepy kid tropes, I feel like you're really gonna like this one. Next, I have a YA horror, and it's The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a YA Carrie retelling. So this one, we are following this girl Maddie, and she is our Carrie, and basically she is being bullied at school because of her race and the color of her skin, and she is just overall being bullied all the time at this school, and we are just following her and the moments leading up to her prom. So it's told exactly like, you know, Stephen King's Carrie, and we are also following this like little podcast element as we flip chapters, and the podcast is kind of set in present day called Maddie Did It, and there's all these different like little interviews and news articles and things about what happened at the prom, and then in our other chapters we are just following the past and the events that happened leading up to prom. I think it is a really great Carrie retelling because it doesn't stray too far from the story of Carrie, but it also puts things in there like, you know, colorism and bullying and different things that give it meaning, if you know what I'm saying. It's like Carrie, but with even more depth and meaning, and I just absolutely loved this story, and like the couple of twists that kind of happened at the end took me by surprise, and it's what made me fall in love. It's what made me fall in love with Tiffany D. Jackson's writing, and I cannot wait to read her entire backlist. Next, I have one of my all-time favorite reads ever, and it's We Spread by Ian Reid. I think last year I mentioned I'm Thinking of Ending Things is not one of my favorite books that I've read. It was kind of for me, but this one is literally one of my favorite books of all time. So we are following this elderly woman named Penny, and she basically starts deteriorating mentally, and she's living alone. And so we're following from her point of view, so we don't know like what's real, what's not, because she's suffering from memory issues. So we're following her as she navigates life, and she is basically told, okay, her husband put aside some money for her to go into this like assisted living, and so we are now following her in this assisted living, and she is saying that all these people are evil and there's something like creepy and crazy going on in this assisted living. We don't know what is true, what is not true. We don't know what to believe as the reader. It is crazy. It's all over the place. There are so many different like interpretations of this book. I cannot wait to reread this one because I've talked to so many people who have their own interpretation of things, and my interpretation was kind of just straightforward of, you know, someone suffering with dementia and memory loss, and, you know, being someone that has worked in a nursing home for 6 years, that's kind of where my brain went and how I interpreted things, but it seems like everyone has their own little opinion, so I can't wait to reread this one. Literally the most fantastic book. It is sad, it's depressing, it will make you cry, but so well done. This is such an amazing book. Next, I have 3 horror books that technically aren't extreme horror, but have a lot more trigger warnings than the other books that I just mentioned. So the first one being Petrified Women. This one is this teeny tiny little novella, and it is about abuse. It's about relationship abuse, sexual abuse, and we are following this couple, and they like pranking each other. That's what they do. They pull pranks on each other. So the girl, I forget her name, Harley, she is like, oh, I'm gonna get my boyfriend good. I have this really great prank in place this year, and I'm going to like surprise him on his birthday. And so she breaks into his apartment and is hiding, and she can't wait to play this prank, and then something crazy happens and everything takes a turn into this story. I don't really want to say more. I don't want to give anything else away. This had me in a chokehold. It's only like 80 pages, and I read this all in one sitting. I couldn't look away. I felt so much anxiety reading this. It's kind of like a horror thriller. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and you know, the way that it talks about abuse and the thoughts that you have after abuse when you have like PTSD, it was just so well done. Next is Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. Of course, I've talked about this one a million times. Literally one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. We are following this guy, and he retells these stories that happen from his childhood. It's non-linear, so he tells you basically when he was in 1st grade, I think it was, they had to do this assignment where they write write a letter and attach it to a balloon, and then wherever it lands, like the person's supposed to write you back. So then they get letters from their pen pals and find out kind of where their pen pal lives and this and that, and he just gets creepy little blurry pictures from his pen pal, and the stories get crazier and crazier as you go into the book, and it's kind of all about how his entire life was changed from this one project and what happens. It is creepy, unsettling, disturbing. Look up trigger warnings. This is one of those books that genuinely freaked me out. Like, it is disturbing. Like, it genuinely disturbed me. It is so depressing, so sad and unsettling, but so good. Like, this is, oh, I keep hitting myself with books. This is one of the best books I've literally ever read. And I know some people don't like this book. I don't trust you. I don't trust you if you don't love this book, okay? This is, it's one of those masterpiece books for me, honestly. The next masterpiece is American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. I finally got around to reading this book. Of course, I've seen the movie a million times. Of course, I'm sure you've probably seen the movie as well. But we are following Patrick Bateman and his little psycho ass as he navigates life. So he is just a psycho. He's a psychopath. And he is, you know, rich and handsome and popular, and he hangs out with all the rich people, and he has this girlfriend that he treats like shit, and he's just a terrible, terrible person. And we are following his slow descent into madness. And, you know, this book is filled with very offensive subject matter. Just the slow descent into madness and how he gets more and more mentally unstable as the book goes on, and what happens is wild. It's the kind of thing where you're like not sure what's real, what's not. Did that actually happen? Did that not happen? Is it just in his head? Like, we're just trapped in his head as he thinks these horrific, terrible thoughts about other people the entire book, and it is so messed up. But it was so well done. It was just addicting. I just could not stop. I was like, oh my gosh, what is he gonna think next? What is he gonna do next? Like, this guy is such a piece of shit. And I was obsessed with this book. Also, I feel like I am now a fashion designer and I can describe everyone's outfit and what brand it is and how it looks, and that's all he does. He describes fashion. Next, I'm moving on to even more extreme horror. So these all have really horrific, disgusting, disturbing subject matter. Please look up trigger warnings. I don't know how many times I have to say that in a video, but it seems like whenever I don't say it, people come for me, okay? So look them up. These are all extremely disgusting, disturbing, and graphic, traumatizing, okay? And the first one is Into the Wolf's Den by John Athen. This one is literally, I think, one of the most traumatizing extreme horror books I've ever read, but probably the best extreme horror book I've ever read. So this one, we are following these kids that were kidnapped by a man in a wolf mask and a man in a pig mask, and they love sex trafficking and human trafficking. Literally one of my biggest anxiety triggers, and that's what this book is about. They kidnap children, people, literally anyone, and use them for human trafficking and sex trafficking. And it is so disgusting, so graphic, so horrific. I'm still traumatized from this book, and we are following the dad as he's trying to find his daughters and try to get them back. And it is sad, it is heartbreaking, it is depressing, bleak, disgusting, but literally one of the most well done extreme horror books I've ever read. I really love John Athen and the way he writes and tells a story. All his books have a point, they have a meaning. It's not just like gross just to be gross. They are all based off of not true stories, but true enough where like they probably did happen somewhere, sadly enough. And it is just so sad that this one, if you have any triggers that have to do with children, please don't read this one. And also the next one I'm about to talk about, The Groomer by John Athen. This is basically the same book, but a more tame version, but still extremely graphic and horrific and extreme horror. So we are following this dad as he searches for his daughter that was kidnapped by this man who is a pedophile and kidnaps children, and he is trying to find this man and try to get his daughter back. We are following the dad basically after like the beginning chapters of what happens, and it's very graphic. We are following the dad throughout the rest of the entire book and getting his perspective. So it is sad, it is disturbing. Following this dad as he desperately searches for his daughter is heartbreaking. But again, such like well done extreme horror. I am obsessed with John Athen. So this one and Into the Wolf's Den, very similar stories. Next is a book that is based off of a true story, and it's The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. I know a lot of people can't handle reading this because it's true, it's based off of a true story, and I completely understand. I think it was insanely well done. I can only recommend this for like a small little group of people. Like if you're someone that's looking for this type of thing, that's who I would recommend it to. But we are following the story of Sylvia Likens, how she was basically held captive by a woman that would kind of babysit her, and all of the neighborhood children, they held her captive, abused her in every way that you can possibly be abused, and it is sad, sick, disgusting. I cannot believe that this happened in real life. It is horrific. And yeah, I mean, Jack Ketchum, there's no doubt he is an extremely talented author, was an extremely talented author, rest in peace. But whoo, this is a heavy one. This one fucked me up for quite some time, knowing that this actually happened. Next, For the Sake of by Judith Sonnet. This one is a short one. This is book 1. I also have book 2, which I also highly recommend. But this one is about this group of people on the dark web. They love to torture people for fun, and they kind of make it into like a little game. So they basically capture someone and they tell them like, okay, you have to do this or else I'm gonna kill someone that you love, or else I'm gonna do this. And basically the things get more and more fucked up as the little game goes along, and he records all these things for his little dark web website where people can watch, and they pay him, and it's sick. My stomach's growling. It is very, very sick. We are following this woman as she is desperate to get her child back. They kidnap her child and they tell her, okay, in order to get your child back, you're gonna have to do this, and then you're gonna have to do this. And they tell her these little sick games that they want her to participate in. It is messed up, but it kind of reads like a little thriller as well. Like the cops are involved, the husband is involved, everyone is looking for like what is going on and where their child is. It's high stakes, it's anxiety inducing, and if you're looking for good extreme horror done well, look no further. Also, the second one is really messed up, and that one's even more disgusting. Next is, of course, True Crime by Samantha Kolesnik. This one, we are following this girl Susie and her brother, and they basically have this really horrible mom, and so they decide to kill her and then go out on a road trip together. Yeah, so we are following them as they are escaping after they murder their mom and go out on this little road trip. It has so many trigger warnings. There's also some like animal cruelty in here, which is not my favorite, but it's short, it's bleak, it's depressing. If you're looking for a bleak little extreme horror novella, look no further. The writing is stunning, so well done. Another one where like you have no idea where this is gonna go. Like the whole time you're reading and you're like, you just don't know what's next, you know? So well done, and they're just little psychos. Next is Gone to See the Riverman by Christopher Triana. In this one, we are following this girl who is obsessed with a serial killer that's in jail. She's like a little groupie, and she writes letters to him, and he tells her like, okay, if you want to be my #1 groupie, like, okay, you're gonna have to go to my cabin in the middle of the woods and retrieve this key from a chest, and then give it to this man only known as the Riverman. She brings her little like mentally challenged sister along. Why? And they go out on this quest to find this key to bring to the Riverman. It's fucked up. It's extreme horror, but it's more like psychological. Like once you learn what is going on with this family, bitch, like you're not ready. This is like, I could not believe what I was reading. I was like, oh my gosh, this family, talk about family drama. Oh my gosh, when you learn what is going on, it's disgusting. It's not so much like gore and, you know, like splatterpunk gore, nasty, gnarly stuff. It's like more psychologically disturbing. So if you're looking for like a beginner horror, extreme horror book, I guess, this might be a good one to start with. It's nasty. Then I have Tundra is the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. This one, we are following this dystopian society where the animal meat goes poisonous, bad, and people have to eat other people in order to survive. They have to partake in cannibalism in order to survive. And so it is now the new normal. You know, it is being broadcasted everywhere, and humans are literally put on a factory farm, and they are treated how animals are treated in factory farms, and they are being bred for meat. And you are literally following like what they do in a slaughterhouse, what they do on a farm, and instead of animals, it's happening to people. It is bleak, disturbing, depressing, messed up. You feel like there's just no hope. And I loved it. Listen, those are the types of books I love. I love bleak, depressing books, and this was no different. The ending, I know some people didn't like the ending. I thought it was amazing. I loved this entire book. It was so well done, so beautifully written. I am obsessed with everything about this book. It is a masterpiece. It just has so many deeper meanings, and it is absolutely brilliant and stunning. Then last but not least, I have my little nonfiction memoir category here, and the first one being Steve-O's new book, A Hard Kick in the Nuts. This is kind of like, he kind of meant this to be like a little self-help book slash memoir, but it's Steve-O from Jackass, like so I really loved it. Jackass is like my favorite thing ever. So whenever Steve-O writes a book, of course I run out and buy it. And I just really like this one. It was funny, it was raw, it was, he gives a lot of insight into like some decisions in his life, and like, you know, why he doesn't want to have kids and different things. And it's so it's written in a way where it's so relatable. You're like, oh yeah, I feel the same way about that, you know? It was just refreshing because I love Steve-O as a person. Like, from someone who used to be a huge douche, and now to see him like being such a great human being, and just like his stances and the things that he does, and like he donates money, and he really, you know, tries to work a lot with animals, and he does so many great things now that he's not like a drug addicted douche anymore. And I just really loved, you know, seeing him all throughout the years grow into being such a cool person. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So I just really love this one because I love Steve-O and I love Jackass. So of course, anything that he does, I'm going to support. And it ended up being a 5-star read for me. Like, it ended up just being such a fun, lighthearted nonfiction, which is what I needed at the time. And of course, the next one is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. This is a book that, you know, is about Jennette McCurdy from Nickelodeon. She was on Sam and Cat with Ariana Grande, and basically her life growing up and how she went through so much abuse with her mom and didn't know that it was abuse at the time and thought it was normal, and the abuse and stuff that she went through on Nickelodeon. And you know, seeing a celebrity being so like real and honest and vulnerable and open about things that have happened to them and abuse like this, I think it really just helps shed light on things. And I think it's so helpful for other people, and it's so nice to hear a celebrity be so like honest and vulnerable. And it's not, you know, everything is so wonderful, my life is wonderful because I am a celebrity. You know, it was just so refreshing, and I think it's going to be so helpful for other people that might have gone through this, or might have went through, or are currently going through something similar. And I just really appreciate how real this book is, and I just love the writing in this. I think Jennette McCurdy did like such an awesome job. And yeah, I know this is like everyone's favorite this year, but for a reason. It's just such a well done memoir. Probably the best memoir that I've ever read, if I'm being honest. So yeah, that's it. That's a wrap. That's a wrap on 2022. These are my favorite books that I've read this year, and if you read any of these, if you like them, make sure you comment down below and let me know, or if there's any that you want to check out in 2023, let me know, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!